Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I'm going to talk about morale improvement. Specifically, I want to answer a question from Rhinosaur77 who asked, I'd love to see a video on how you would keep team morale up during stressful times at work. The chocolate tasting meetings you had were great, and the bacon fairy was a highlight during work, even if the fun police didn't like it. It really helped us keep a bit more sane. So I've never done a video on morale, and I have a couple caveats about that. But let me just mention that Rhinosaur77 and I work together at Carbine, so he's somebody who knows me, and he's also a master channel member. So I'm filming this on a Thursday morning. Since Friday's already unlocked, this will be Monday's video. Anyway, let's dive into morale improvement. This is something I've never thought of doing because looking back, I did do things to try to improve morale, but it just felt like what I was supposed to be doing. Once I became a project manager on Fallout, and then later when I owned a company, and then I was a director or a lead, I just felt this is stuff I should do. They're not big things. In fact, some of them may seem like ridiculously small, and why are you bothering to mention it? But I bring it up because they were big for some people, and I'll mention that when I get to them. But also, these were not enforced things. These were not like those team building exercises that some companies do where it's like you will attend and you will make something out of popsicle sticks and you will interact with your fellow workers. None of these things were like that. These, I think, were genuinely fun things. Almost all of them were optional, and the ones that weren't optional because we were doing them for a work related reason. But it turned out to be we kept doing them later for morale, and I'll talk about that. I'll go through all the companies I worked at because I did different things at different companies. Again, there's only 5 companies, but I thought long and hard about the first company I worked at, Pegasus, which changed its name to Cybron. I couldn't think of anything morale building there. They didn't do anything. I was a teenager. I was 16. I didn't do anything. So I'm skipping them. So let's dive right into Interplay. One of the earliest things I remember about Interplay was Thursday Night Thing, which I told you we'd all get together on Thursday nights. We'd run out, grab food from different places. Sometimes we'd go eat together. Sometimes we'd just grab food from different places because people wanted different things. And we'd meet back in the main conference room, like 7 or 8, and we'd watch movies. We'd play multiplayer Super Nintendo games or multiplayer Atari Lynx games, or we'd play D&D or GURPS or something like that, and it was fun. I don't remember who started it, but I know I was a big proponent of keeping it going to the point where I would often send out the emails, hey, we're doing this, we're going to go out to eat here, or hey, everybody grab food and be back by this time. So it was something that I kept going. And the only reason I stopped, ironically, was when Fallout got so intense that we were working so, or at least I was, such crazy hours on it. We kind of stopped doing it. Plus, we moved to new offices that didn't have a convenient conference room for us to get together in, like the one we were. But I also mentioned, like, when we played GURPS. GURPS was something that I started inviting people in the evening for fun. It started for fun. We would play it. I just wanted to introduce people to GURPS. I liked running GURPS sessions. I loved, because GURPS characters could have so many different skills, I loved watching what the players would do and how they'd figure out how to solve the adventure. Later, when we actually were thinking of picking up the GURPS license, and then we did for Fallout, I ran a few more sessions to actually teach GURPS to people. And that was really important, and I discovered that later for Temple of Elemental Evil, that if you're going to have a group of people work on a game, they should know the rules. So if you license a product, if it's Star Wars, they should watch the movies. If it's a tabletop game, they should play it. But it also helped the team gel. I mean, they're sitting there playing a game, they're talking with each other. It was very good for team morale and team cohesion, especially when I played the GURPS campaigns and they saw how many different ways there were to solve the same puzzle or adventure, and then they saw how different groups did it. That really helped with getting the team on board on the multiple quest solutions. Another thing I almost forgot I had done was I used to bring in cinnamon bread because I like to bake cinnamon bread, but there was no way I was going to eat an entire loaf of it. So I'd make a fresh loaf, not every morning, but probably three mornings a week, and I'd bring it in. And I got in early. I got in like 7 or 8 a.m. So it would pop out of my bread maker, and I'd go to work, and it'd be hot and steaming and fresh. And I'd slice it up, and I'd eat a slice or two, and then I'd leave the rest out for people to have. And there were people who would come in late, and they were like, "Hey, you're not saving me any." And I'm like, "First come, first serve." There were people who started coming in earlier. And then if they came in early enough that I was arriving with it, we'd sit and eat cinnamon bread and talk about, "Hey, did you see this new feature that went in? Or did you see this really cool animation someone did, or a cool cinematic?" And it was fun. It was morale building, and I had no idea it was happening. So later at Troika made me realize I have to do that stuff deliberately. And when I ran Temple, and I talk about this when I talk about the fun of doing Temple of Elemental Evils development, we would play D&D because I had learned, hey, when we did a game based on GURPS, people should learn to play it. So we started playing D&D. I think it was one day a week. I think it was Wednesday afternoons for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. The team would sit down and play. They would make their characters beforehand. That way they could email me questions. They could look at the books. They could figure out, what D&D 3.0 and then later 3.5, although I think we had stopped playing by the time we switched to 3.5. They learned how the game worked, and it helped. And you may go, well, did it really help that much? And I was like, yes, it helped not only the designers, but when you had an artist who was trying to think of what animations they had to make, they knew that like a fall down stand-up animation was required. They saw people throw grease, which made people fall down, make enemies fall down and have to stand back up. There was a trip attack in D&D, which made people fall down and they'd have to get up. There were sleep attacks that would make people fall asleep. They'd fall down and go to sleep. So we needed animations for that, and you didn't have to explain to the animators what it would be used for. We played D&D. They saw it. One thing I also started doing was I had lunch with people more often when I was at Troika. I didn't do that much before or since because, I was an introvert and I needed I'm an introvert extrovert. I have a whole video about whether I'm an introvert extrovert. And I needed that downtime to recharge my introvert battery. But at Troika, it was such a small company. There weren't a lot of people to do things with. So I started regularly just going to lunch. Sometimes I'd take the group to lunch. There was a local mom and pop pizza place in Irvine that we all loved the pizza. They loved us because it was a small place. But since it was usually nice weather, we'd sit out in the patio. We weren't loud. But, I'd show up with 14 people. I'd order a ton of pizzas and drinks. We'd pick up after ourselves, and we'd sit out in the patio. So we weren't even filling up a lot of booths in the restaurant. The mom and pop loved us. Mom especially. She loved seeing us. I would sometimes call her and say, we're headed over. So we had a regular order, so she'd get it started. So we'd arrive and we could eat. It was really good. Similarly, there was a Chinese place less than a block from one of Troika's offices that I discovered and was really good because it was halal, which I guess is really common in the western part of China. I've never had better Chinese food. In fact, the Kung Pao chicken they had is the best I've ever had in my life. We used to just walk there, order stuff to go, walk back, eat at the conference room table, talk about stuff, talk about the game, talk about things we were stuck on, talk about a movie we saw. It was very calming and a nice break in the middle of the day. By the way, we could also, because we would walk there, we'd often take the dog. I mentioned in the pets video that I'd bring my dog to work. That dog was a great morale builder because people would often like to take a break and just come in my office and sit on the floor and pet the dog. And that was fun and it was relaxing. And sometimes they would be stuck on something and they'd tell me what they're stuck on. And I didn't solve it for them. I was just kind of a sounding board. Petting the dog lowered their blood pressure. And I would just be like, well, what have you tried? Have you done this? And then they would come up with a solution on their own. But it was just a nice, calm, there was a reason to be there and bounce ideas off. And if there was a big lull in the conversation, that was fine. They were really there to pet the dog. So that worked really well. I also talked occasionally in the afternoon. We'd stop and watch a Chinese soap opera that no one understood. And that was fun too. We'd try to guess at what was going on and what the characters were doing and what the plot was. And that was fun. And it was team building in a way that back then I didn't consciously think I was doing it, but it really did help. So when you fast forward to Carbine, especially I've mentioned in that video that there was, and that's who Rhinosaur is referring to, that there was the fun police. We weren't supposed to talk to each other. Well, I'd have chocolate eating meetings because I'd like to eat chocolate, but I didn't want to eat the whole bar. So I would post, and this was almost daily. I'd tell people, if you want to come, let me know, and I'd send you an email, and it was around 3 o'clock. Hey, I'm eating this chocolate bar. I mean, there were people who took multiple cigarette breaks every day, so it was okay for people to take a 10-minute break and come try a piece of chocolate. And we'd talk about stuff. And it was people from all the departments: art, programming, design, audio. People would come by, try some chocolate. Maybe not the same people every time. I had some regulars, and then I had people who'd stop by occasionally. We also, after hours, we'd still play D&D, and I did that with a lot of artists. I know I wasn't supposed to be talking to artists, but I did, because I didn't care for that director or his mandates. So we played D&D after hours. We'd get together and watch MST 3000 or Riff Tracks, because that was newer. I did that mostly with artists, in fact. That was interesting because they got to see me not as the other director described me. And it was a bit eye-opening for some of them. And at the same time, it was very morale building. I can't tell you how many times at a chocolate eating meeting, maybe an artist and a programmer would be there, and the programmer would say, hey, did you see that new feature I put in? You can do this now. And he goes, no, I didn't see it. And he goes, come by my office. I'll show you how it works. That was worth the price of a chocolate bar. At Obsidian, when I went there, when I first arrived and I was working on South Park, I used to bring in baked goods a lot. And a lot of them were ones Robert was making. He'd make these baked goods, and I'm like, there are 36 muffins here. And he's like, take them to work. So I'd take baked goods in. And when I started at Obsidian, the interesting thing about it is I already knew about a third of the people there. But a lot of the other 2/3 learned, hey, Tim gets in early, like at 8. And many times I'd send a message out going, there are blueberry muffins, there are chocolate cookies, there's cinnamon bread in the South Park lounge, which is a little meeting area, a little corner area. I set it out for people to try, and it was fun. I met a lot of new people. I'd chat with people I used to work with at Interplay. It was a great morale builder without me consciously trying to do it. And then later, when I was running the Outer Worlds, I did consciously start up chocolate eating meetings. And again, I watched it happen where people on my team who normally didn't talk to each other, narrative designers and animators, they would come to the chocolate eating meeting and they'd talk about the chocolate, or they made something. Oh, I saw something really cool in the game today, and it turns out the person who made it, maybe she was sitting right there, and it's like, you like that dialogue? You like that animation? It was fun to watch that happen and watch people interact in an unforced, very casual way. So, those are all the things I could realize of things I did intentionally or not that were morale boosters. Now, some of you are going, wait, wouldn't these are things you would have done anyway? Would I? Some of these things I would not have done. I mentioned that I needed, as an introvert, I kind of needed my downtime. So I liked going home for lunch and just having an hour of quiet time. So the fact that I was taking people to lunch at Troika was a deliberate morale thing. In fact, I didn't do it very much before or after Troika. And also, like the chocolate eating meetings, I could have eaten a little bit of chocolate and saved the rest, or eaten a little bit of chocolate and tossed the rest. But I liked talking about chocolate with other people, but I also liked that they would then talk with each other. It was a very superficially obvious way of getting different people on the team to just chat with each other socially, with no other context other than we're gonna talk about chocolate. If we happen to talk about the game, great. If someone has a question, great. So of all these things, I think the most successful was probably the dog. The dog was very good at getting people to feel quickly like they were part of the team, or from the dog's point of view, part of the pack. And I told you the story in one of the videos about the new programmer who wondered why my dog would come in and look at him every day, and it's because he was expecting a treat because the old programmer who sat at that desk had treats. I know that sometimes when the dog got a lot more comfortable, he would sometimes go and sit in other people's offices. And that was neat for the people because it's like, oh, the dog chose me. But also, I was happy that the dog was feeling comfortable and safe because this was a dog I had rescued who was very anxious. But that dog was kind of a social morale booster just by being a dog. Just by, here's a dog, doesn't say anything, very calm, very just happy to be there. And it just made everybody sort of interact. Sometimes, someone will be petting the dog, someone else come over and pet the dog, and now they're talking while they're petting the dog. Dog loves it, they love it. I would say of all the different morale boosters, probably that dog was number one, and the chocolate eating meetings were very close number two. Anyway, Rhinosaur 77, I hope this answered your question. I hope everybody else liked the video.